Hello and welcome to Writing Today. In this episode, we're going to be doing a book review of Redwall by Brian Jacques. As always, if you enjoy this review, please be sure to leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already. With that said, let's get straight into the review. The Tales of Redwall is a popular series still today, which started in the late 80s. It is written by Brian Jacques, and it starred semi-anthropomorphic beings who had similar hierarchy to their counterparts in nature. It's a medieval fantasy, in other words, with a childish but rather charming twist, where the characters are woodland creatures. In this episode of Writing Today, I'll be reviewing the very first book in the series, Redwall. Now let's kick off this review with a short summary of what to expect. In this book, the story is about Redwall Abbey, a humble abbey where mice and other friendly creatures reside. Being peaceful creatures who either heal the sick or farm or fish, it comes as a shock to them all when a band of bandit rats, led by a sea rat named Clooney the Scourge, puts their abbey under siege. The creatures of Redwall must take up arms and defend their abbey, the main defender being the brave mouse Matthias, who has often dreamed of becoming a warrior. Fate has allowed him to do so, and he faces many challenges that test his courage and strength throughout the novel. It's a story that should sound all too familiar to most readers, as it is a story of good versus evil. It's a story about a fight in service of peace. Yet, war is only one part of the book, as there are many little adventures throughout the story as well. With that said, let's start talking about the characters that you'll be reading in this book. Now, there are many characters in this book, as there typically is in most fantasy novels, so I'll only be talking about the main characters that you will be interested in. First, there is Matthias. Matthias is a small, naive mouse who aspires to take up the sword and become a brave warrior like Martin the Warrior, an important mouse in the history of Redwall. His instincts are great, but his resolve is often tested. Matthias faces difficult challenges throughout the book. Next, our antagonist, Clooney the Scourge. As I said before, Clooney is a sea rat, and with a long tail that he often uses as a whip. He is a vicious warlord, seeking to conquer and destroy, growing his army as he razes peaceful places to the ground. Clooney sets his eyes on Redwall, and the creatures of Redwall are understandably afraid. Clooney has a large army filled with rats, stoats, and weasels. He also has various captains, each one ambitious and black-hearted, just like their leader. When it comes to the contents of Redwall, many play key roles in the defense of the abbey. There is Constance, a badger, strong and fierce. Her strength is bolstered by her smarts, making her an excellent defender. The abbey is led by Abbot Mortimer, a wise old mouse who knows nothing of war and fighting, preferring to heal. He leaves the fighting and planning to those trusted friends, but is a source of counsel always. Now let's talk about the writing style of Redwall. The writing style is in the third-person narrative, which is common when it comes to this genre. The writing style is also fast-paced and simple, yet it still allows for some description where it is necessary. It's a book that you can read easily over a weekend as well. As I've said in previous blog posts and podcasts, when it comes to writing with this simplistic style, if done right, you can easily create a fast-paced, enjoyable story that is still descriptive and immersive when it comes to the world. There is enough world building, in other words, for me to build the rest with my imagination, and there are no gaps that I came across that had me questioning what this was about or what this character did. The story doesn't go in depth when it comes to history and lore. It typically only tells you what you need to know, which is something I prefer with most stories. I always want to get only the necessary information, instead of being bogged down by the unnecessary. It keeps me focused on the story and invested, and it also keeps me from getting bored. Now, since I'm already talking about my thoughts on the book, let me continue to my main points. The first one being that this is a book that is directed towards the younger reader, yet I still find myself enjoying the book. I don't know if that says a lot about me or a lot about the writing itself. I do get a lot more invested in a general fiction story than I do with a book like this, where it obviously has these childish elements, but I would be lying if I wasn't surprised a few times throughout the story with its seriousness. Perhaps the fact that all the characters are woodland creatures helped me peg the story as a tame adventure where nothing really bad ever happens. Yet it is a story filled with death. There are plenty of characters who die, in often very dramatic or harsh ways that you typically wouldn't find in a young reader's story. But by the same token, that is the other side of the story that's probably made it so popular even with adults, is that it is a medieval fiction. So the tactics that are often used in defense of Redwall Abbey are like the tactics used in other medieval sieges we know throughout history. These are tactics that are used without mercy, so it goes without saying that this would probably happen in real life if the situation was with human characters instead of little woodland creatures. As for the personality of these characters, I found many of the characters to be rather simple and bland in personality. There were some characters which I found more interesting than others, but most of the time these characters were pretty one-dimensional. If anything, there were 2 or 3 side characters which popped up throughout the story that I found the most interesting. It seems like more characters are more black and white, while the interesting ones are morally grey, so I can get a lot from these characters when it comes to story, whereas with the other characters I feel like they're just playing their parts in a play. The other difficulty I had when reading the book, initially anyway, was that some woodland creatures would play their realistic counterparts in nature. In other words, they would be less human, they would attack other creatures, they would give into their instincts, that sort of thing. And it read more like just a talking version of that animal. Then there are other creatures which aren't like that. They are more human, and there are some creatures that simply get along with others. And thus becomes a confusing balance between picturing some creatures as bigger than others and others smaller than others when they really shouldn't be. As you can imagine, I quickly abandoned these comparisons to reality, otherwise it would only spoil the story. So no matter what animal a character was, I just took their personality and the role they played as it was presented to me, as this is the best way to get through the story without wondering why some characters didn't attack others and why some characters get along. And no doubt this was what Brian Jacques intended anyway, instead of having us foolish adults try to compare these woodland creatures to their real counterparts in nature. So to conclude, I enjoyed the book. There was plenty of action, there were many scenes that I enjoyed and admired, there were some characters that I was really interested in, and I won't lie to you, there were some scenes that definitely missed the mark when it came to my opinion of the story. But these were scenes that were short, few, and far between. If you enjoy medieval-themed adventures with silly yet charming elements such as this, then you'll enjoy Redwall by Brian Jacques. I might read more in this series sometime in the future, but like with reading all the other series that I've talked about before, I like to break it up with other novels, so it'll be quite some time before I do. If you're planning to start the Tales of Redwall series, I hope you found this review useful. With that, this review has come to an end. If you enjoyed, please be sure to leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already. If you want to check out more of my work, you can find it all on my website, thepensedsleuth.com. Thank you for listening, and as always, good day, good night, and happy reading.